Enter to win a chance to walk a day in Robin's shoes.
A very special guest.
We get asked that a lot. Why has it worked?
You know, we don't have the perfect. I wanted the women and children who come to this shelter to feel safe and.
To help us spot the liars in our life and with advice on the most dangerous kinds of liars, Dr. Phil is here.
Everybody lies. I mean, they really do. Some are malignant liars, and they do it for really evil reasons.
Dr. Phil McGraw spent nearly 5 decades at the heart of American television, not just as a host, but as a cultural figure who shaped how millions of viewers thought about relationships, personal responsibility, and mental health. His signature delivery, sharp, unwavering, and filled with seemingly common-sense advice, cemented him as a household name from the early 2000s. With Robin McGraw by his side in both life and business, they built a media empire that spanned television, books, production companies, and even philanthropic initiatives. Their bond was not just private, it was the foundation of a brand. For years, they were framed as a kind of emotional power couple. She, the poised and smiling partner, always in the front row, and he, the commanding voice of reason. But behind the polished TV segments and red carpet photos was a story no one expected to unfold. Not publicly, not this way. Rumors swirled for years. Tiny clues, like Robin's absence from a few episodes or her social media posts turning unusually vague, were dismissed by fans. That is, until the footage emerged, an 11-second clip that changed everything. Dr. Phil, head bowed, stepping out of a divorce attorney's office in Pasadena, wordless and alone. That brief, blurry video set off a media frenzy, marking the start of a slow unraveling of one of television's most enduring personal brands. For almost 3 years, both remained silent. No confirmations, no denials. Until now. The silence was strategic, but it was also telling. In a media environment where celebrities rush to clear the air, clarify rumors, or reclaim their narrative, the McGraws did something few in their position ever do. They said nothing. That void allowed speculation to spiral. Entertainment podcasts, gossip websites, and YouTube body language experts dissected every moment, gesture, and public appearance, looking for hidden messages or missed signs. Some fans were convinced the marriage had quietly ended, while others insisted that it was simply a rough patch, nothing more. But the signs became harder to ignore. Robin was missing from key episodes of Dr. Phil's farewell season, an emotional time where you'd expect his life partner and creative collaborator to be front and center. When asked directly during a book signing in 2023 about the rumors, Robin offered a calm but firm response. "I'm here as an author today." That statement echoed loudly. It wasn't a denial. It was a signal that her identity was shifting, away from being Dr. Phil's wife to being her own entity. At the same time, internal documents from Stage 29 Productions and later Merit Street, media began to surface, showing clear signs of a rift. Robin was no longer attending key strategy meetings. Her name slowly disappeared from leadership listings. She was, in every way that mattered, stepping away. The audience that once tuned in for advice on marriage and conflict resolution now found themselves watching a drama unfold in real time, one that mirrored the very kinds of stories Dr. Phil himself had helped others work through for years. There's a kind of irony that sits uncomfortably at the heart of this story. Dr. Phil built his legacy on helping couples understand each other, guiding families through emotional chaos, and confronting the painful truths that people often avoid. He emphasized transparency, communication, and directness. Yet when his own relationship was unraveling, he chose silence. Some call it hypocrisy, others call it self-preservation. Either way, the disconnect was not lost on his viewers. For decades, Dr. Phil maintained control over the set, the conversation, and the brand. His viewers trusted him because he seemed unshakable. So when cracks began to show, when his demeanor on air shifted from authoritative to withdrawn, when he began, avoiding emotional subjects or growing defensive, the audience felt it. One of the most shared moments from the final season wasn't a dramatic guest confrontation or emotional breakthrough, but a single sentence delivered quietly by Dr. Phil. Sometimes keeping quiet is the only way to not hurt more. That line, initially overlooked, has since taken on new meaning. It wasn't just a vague reflection, it was a confession. It reflected the emotional tightrope he'd been walking behind the scenes. When he finally spoke, it wasn't through a press conference or flashy media rollout. It was a stripped-down, somber special aired on his own network, with no guests, no audience, just him and the camera. The episode lasted 42 minutes. In that time, he didn't offer excuses. He didn't assign blame. He simply stated, "Robin and I have reached the end of our journey together. With respect, with love, and without needing to harm each other further." It was raw. It was quiet. And for the first time, perhaps, it felt real. What makes this chapter in Dr. Phil's life so fascinating isn't just the celebrity divorce or the media fallout. It's how it reshaped the public's understanding of a man they thought they knew. For years, Dr. Phil stood as the emblem of tough love. His advice was quick, sharp, and often unrelenting. But now, stripped of the image, viewers are left wondering, who is the man behind the authority? In that revealing special, he admitted, something that caught even his harshest critics off guard. "I got so used to giving advice that I forgot to ask if people needed to hear it." That line exploded across social media. It wasn't just an apology, it was a moment of self-awareness. For decades, Dr. Phil had been the voice in the room, always talking, always leading. But now he was listening to his own shortcomings, to the reality that not every problem can be solved with a 30-minute solution. In a society that often idolizes strength and certainty, especially from public figures, admitting emotional failure is a radical act. His acknowledgement wasn't a grand gesture of redemption, but it did humanize him in a way that had previously been impossible. No longer the untouchable expert with all the answers, Dr. Phil became a man facing the same vulnerabilities he once helped others confront. His critics saw it as calculated, especially since the special aired the same day as his new autobiography. But others saw a different story, a man finally letting go of the performance, if only briefly, to tell the truth about love, loss, and emotional miscalculation. What followed that moment of vulnerability, however, was a transformation that not everyone welcomed. Instead of stepping back or recentering his image, Dr. Phil leaned hard into a new identity, one that was more political, more combative, and less about emotional healing. He attended CPAC, aligned himself with conservative media outlets, and made appearances alongside figures like Texas's governor to discuss education reform and traditional family values. In doing so, he traded the role of TV psychologist for that of a culture warrior. To some, it was a natural evolution. After all, he'd always stood for accountability and structure, values that aligned closely with conservative ideologies. But to others, it felt like a betrayal. Dr. Phil wasn't just rebranding. He was abandoning the very principles he'd used to build trust with his audience. His appearances became more polarizing. Episodes of Dr. Phil Prime Time started to focus on politically charged topics like immigration, woke culture, and parental rights. Clips from the show were shared widely, but not always favorably. Younger viewers on platforms like TikTok began to critique his tone, his guest selection, and his seeming disinterest in progressive perspectives. A generation that had once grown up watching him with their parents now saw him as emblematic of an outdated media era, one that relied more on spectacle than understanding. And as this shift took root, questions emerged about the authenticity of his public evolution. Was this truly Dr. Phil's new philosophy, or was it a survival strategy for a man whose traditional media platform was fading? The final puzzle piece in this story is Robin McGraw, whose journey deserves as much attention as her ex-husband's. For years, she was seen as the supportive partner, the woman who stood by her man while also publishing bestsellers and promoting women's self-worth. But as the relationship unraveled, it became clear that Robin was carving her own path, quietly but firmly. Long before the divorce became public, she had already begun to reposition herself. In interviews, she spoke more about personal identity, self-reliance, and the toll of being publicly defined by another person's narrative. Her 2024 book devoted entire chapters to emotional burnout and the silent compromises women often make in the name of loyalty. Looking back, those weren't just generic pieces of advice. They were coded expressions of her own experience. Internally, sources reported that Robin had stopped signing off on major projects at Merit Street Media and had relinquished strategic decision-making responsibilities. Yet she never lashed out publicly. There was no tell-all interview, no scandalous exposé, just a quiet withdrawal that mirrored the way the marriage ended. And that, perhaps, is the greatest reflection of how deeply entangled the personal and professional lives of these two individuals had become. Their separation wasn't just a private event, it was the dismantling of a decades-long brand built on the appearance of unity. But in their divergence, both have revealed more about themselves than years of television ever did. Dr. Phil, once the loudest voice in the room, showed that even he had blind spots, and Robin, once seen as the silent partner, revealed strength and subtlety in choosing her own story over the one people expected her to play. This story isn't just about the end of a marriage, it's about the end of an era. Dr. Phil and Robin McGraw represented a specific kind of American ideal for years: the devoted couple, the successful partnership, the seamless blend of private, love, and public purpose. But that ideal was always more fragile than it seemed. Their story mirrors the broader changes happening in how we view relationships, gender roles, and media personalities. Audiences today are more skeptical, more attuned to authenticity. They no longer accept authority at face value. And in that landscape, Dr. Phil is learning, perhaps too late, that control doesn't equal connection. You can have the spotlight, the platform, and the influence. But if you're not emotionally present in your own life, eventually that absence will catch up with you. His story, though filled with controversy and contradiction, still holds meaning, not as a cautionary tale, but as a reminder that no one, not even the people who teach us about emotions for a living, is immune to personal failure. What comes next for Dr. Phil remains to be seen. But in this moment, stripped of pretense and filtered light, what remains is simply a man who once claimed to have all the answers, now standing in front of millions and admitting he's still figuring it out.